Peace, peace. This is your brother, the lone low life with the home sewn garment, the Boricua with the build, the true and living God stepping the score, Sunez Allah, aka Skilla straight or low. And I'm with my brothers, Uncle E and Sincere at the Changing of the Hip Hop Guards podcast. You know what I mean? Analyzing, detailing, cataloging, building, and always adding on. Peace.
Welcome everyone to Changing of the Hip Hop Guards podcast. It's me, Uncle E. That's my partner, the journalist Sincere. And today we have none other than author, journalist, historian, teacher, martial artist. You name it, this guy has done it all. The one and only Sunez is joining us tonight, man. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. How are you doing today, sir?
Peace. Peace. Everything is great, man. Everything is great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
No doubt. So before we get into what you got going on these days, man, can you do us a favor? Let's take it back a little bit. Give us a little background story about yourself growing up. Where are you from? And then we'll work our way up to this present time.
Indeed. I'm a Puerto Rican from Sunset Park, Brooklyn. You know what I mean? New Eurekan, grew up there my whole life, my whole childhood, my first 20 years of my life. That's not really, I call it the lung of Medina because the gods call Bed-Stuy the heart of Medina. So I always call it the withered lung of Medina.
Okay.
But not a lot of people don't know about Sunset Park, but it's a Puerto Rican neighborhood. When I was young in the 80s, and my hip hop life wasn't much of a hip hop life. I was like any kid in that neighborhood. I was breakdancing. I was inspired by the breakdancing that went on when I was in elementary school, in the early 80s. By the time I was in middle school, junior high school, I had no musical aspiration, no musical insights at all. Zero. I didn't listen to music by myself. I didn't really care for music, none of that kind of stuff. It was really when I was in high school when I started to actually listen to the music. Until then, just the nature, the attitude, the vibe of Rakim was all I thought was what quality hip hop was. But I never understood any of the lyrics. I never followed it. You know what I mean? And that goes for most music. I just heard whatever pop music was around. But I fell in love with it in high school. So my life in hip hop tracks pretty fast because the addiction was strong. So I'm in high school in the early 90s. And by the time I'm in college, that's when I start writing for my first magazine. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So by the time I'm in college, I start writing in the school paper. I went to CUNY's Baruch College, and I didn't know it then. You know what I'm saying? And by the way, as a note about how much I read, I didn't know that there were magazines that wrote about hip hop.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's the kind of funny thing that I end up in hip hop magazines because I literally discovered them just like a year before I started writing them. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you real quick before you continue. You say you were listening to like Rakim and all of that, but you didn't understand it.
Oh, because I saw the videos. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
When we breakdance, we only cared about the beat. You know what I mean? So like, I ain't no joke was inspiring, but I couldn't really catch any of the lyrics. I was only catching the attitude, the vibe. You know what I'm saying? The b-boy vibe, the b-boy toughness, and that's what everybody emulated. That's what I was emulating when I was b-boying as a kid and battling in elementary. Thought what it was best in junior high, but I didn't know that it had content. To me, it was just another type of music that was in the hood. You had brothers doing salsa. You know what I mean? Where I lived, like you had people like in bands and shit like that. All of that was just different types of music. We had that one, but it didn't really resonate with me. You know what I mean? It was only in high school when I could choose my own music. And then I really started to listen. Then it was certain groups that really, I started listening to like Tribe Called Quest, Brand Nubian, started to really, really listen. You know what I mean?
Are these some of the groups that helped you get in the 5% Nation?
I got Knowledge of Self when I was nearing the end of my college life. So there were influences throughout, little things that were peppered that stay in your head, and like I could say I could give credit to a lot of these things because some of these things stayed in my head and they influenced me on all types of things. So like I became a vegan before I even got Knowledge of Self. So things like, KRS-One's Beef, with BDP, little lines. I always tell people that it's the line that was echoing when I finally got rid of pork was Common's line on I forgot the name, man, on Maintain on the 1994 album. You know, I Used to Love Her.
Resurrection.
Okay.
Resurrection. He had a line in there and said, "What type of rebel eats pork?" And that line was on loop. But I would go back to other songs and say, "Wow, this has been in my head the whole time. I just didn't put it together." Same thing with the Knowledge of Self. You know what I'm saying? Certain lines and stuff like that. But I always attribute it like to you know, Brand Nubian, their albums. And most people say the first album, but for me, the album that was more in my head was the 1994 album, Everything Is Everything.
Okay.
That was probably the first album that was, because they have the skit where Farrakhan is talking about you know, what the 5% means. And he's saying that when you know, you teach. And I thought it was so valiant. Now, I didn't know what he's talking about as far as what is it that we're teaching. I just
right.
took all of this in as warrior music. And I'm like, I'm some type of warrior because I'm in a war. I'm in a battle to survive. We're being oppressed. I'm being, you know, I'm acknowledging these things slowly as I'm in my college career. So those things stayed in the back of my head, but it was only till I would say 97 where it became very overt. You know, really, honestly, I put the whole thing into RZA's performance on Wu-Tang Forever. His whole performance, highlighted by his verse on Impossible, not Impossible, Duck Season.
Okay.
Because he says, "I got my queen and my seeds and my 120 lessons." And that's when I was like, but what is that 120 lessons? What is that? And that kind of stayed in my head. You know what I'm saying?
So I'm sorry, you didn't have anybody that you knew that was already a 5% nation.
No,
this is all just from hearing music.
In the beginning, yes.
In the beginning.
Where I was from, the gangs were Nieta, Familia, Latin Kings. You know, these are the warring gangs. And the gods were not referred to as the gods. They were referred to as God body. So it was more like, those are the gods, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're the god bodies. And I never heard the term gods by itself. And I would ask questions with the brothers. I'll be like, yo, but they got the most powerful name though. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all was late with the name right there. You know what I mean? Kings is not greater than God. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know? And of course, I wouldn't be saying this to the gang members and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? But to my brothers that was on the corner and everything, I would just be musing like that, you know? But it was only when I was in college, though, you know, and when I was in college writing at the college paper, and I started to write in Vibe at the same time, like not the same time, but around 2 years in, and other people would try to come and meet me, and one of the, aside from the people from Vibe that were there at the time, it was also my brother Day Son-in-Law, you know what I mean, and he was a 5%er. And he used to say, you know, the articles you write, I had my own column. I was calling it Sunset Style, you know, and I was writing all types of vitriol against whack rappers, whack music, lauding dope music. I was trying a lot of the writing techniques that I really realized soon magazines wouldn't allow me to do. But he was writing in magazines that I wasn't at. And that's how we had our friendship. Okay. And he told me, like, yo, you say you got in these columns, though. You know, you got the knowledge. And I said, what do you mean you got the knowledge? And he explained it to me that there's a place that teaches that. Okay. And I said, what? And eventually he brought me to the other side of Harlem. Because until then, no, my research and going back in my history had been spending a lot of time in Spanish Harlem.
Spanish Harlem, okay.
Because my crate digging took me to soul jazz, but also a lot of salsa. And I was really trying to learn my roots. And I was going and spending lots of time in Spanish Harlem, though, you know, asking the OGs about certain songs, albums. I buy an album and then I tell them, like, what you think about this one? They might be like, you brought the wrong one, young man. You know what I'm saying? Like, good one, you know? And that's how I was learning about salsa from OGs and the college professors, like my mentor, Dr. David Traveso, who was very steeped into it too. But these are levels of consciousness. So I had to get a consciousness of Puerto Rico as an oppressed colony, the history of rebellion and revolution, the history of our Afro-Indigenous roots first. Then that was coinciding with the knowledge of self that I got a little bit later, you know what I'm saying, overtly from Day Son. And he brought me to the school. So he didn't teach me, but he brought me to a law school in Mecca.
Okay.
You know? Yeah, so that's how that journey goes.
Okay.
But the hip hop career, I wasn't really listening to hip hop much, on until I was in high school, and then a short, really like 4 years later, I'm in magazines. You know what I'm saying? So it was a fast journey when I look back on it, but it was a journey that made me obsessively collect. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because I felt like I didn't know anything, and I was right though. I didn't know enough to be writing in no magazine.
Right. Right.
I didn't know that nobody else knew that shit either. I
Right.
just knew that I should know. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I was researching frantically. You know what I'm saying? And catching up. You know what I'm saying?
What do you remember? What was it that got you the or landed you to write? The position on these magazines. Was it a particular article that they saw, or did you just kind of submit something to see if they would,
No, I
put you
didn't
on
submit
board?
anything. I've never submitted a column to any magazine I've been at.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? There's only one. There's only one publication that I ever said, "Hey, I want to write something for you," but I was already well known by then, so it'd be their loss if they didn't take me. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
But
Can you
but
give us the? I'm sorry. Can you give us
Yeah.
the timeline of?
So I start college in 93. By 1996, people from Vibe magazine are already at the same college I'm going to. So they stop by to see who's writing all these hip hop columns. You see, because sometimes the
Okay.
hip hop columns were getting me in trouble, and by 1995, I put it here, I started to say, and some of my hashtags like art and art, science on music, things like that. I never had those hashtags. We didn't have hashtags back then.
Right.
But in 1995, I had the idea of saying that I don't want to be just someone that covers the music, because then I'm not making the music. And I tried every element. I was a terrible graffiti writer. I wasn't a skilled enough DJ, and I didn't have the patience to not just collect all this shit to play, but to play what other people want me to play.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I don't catching the vibe of what people want to hear at a certain moment is a skill, and
Right.
and something people want to do. I didn't have that at all. I want to just play what I want to play, and MCing, I never really tried it. So my whole life growing up, because I didn't listen to hip hop that much until my high school years, I was just learning what the music was saying. So even in high school, I never wrote a rhyme of my own. In college, I was writing columns, and I embraced that as a journalist. And by 1995, I'm in the college, and I was like, I'm hearing, my hero was KRS-One along with Guru. And KRS-One, he talked so much about creativity and stuff that I was like, if I could just be creative, right, in this journalistic field, then it'll be an element. And I was saying writing is another element of hip hop. So I started to make columns that were creative. And a lot of that was inspired of who I call the father of my element, Bones Malone.
Okay.
And I always tell Bones I only read 2 columns of his. Because after I read how dope they were, I was like, I can't read these again, because I'm going to end up biting them. I don't want to copy. If I don't know his writing, I can't copy it.
Right. Okay.
That was my thinking, And so he was writing these columns in Vibe that was so creative. That was like, well, what if I do that with everything? Like the technical pieces, the review, the interview, all of these things. I make them into pieces of art instead of just, great journalism only. And it took, to fast forward a quick skip into the future. None of the magazines allowed me to do that. That's why it took so long for people to see what I meant.
Okay.
No.
Now, why weren't they allowed? Was it because they had to kind of like radio, that they have to follow a certain type of format?
Yeah, I could give you my first examples. Like when I was recruited by the brothers that were working at the time at Double XL, and that was when it was a startup, right? So it was first Vibe, then Double XL. The people that were at Vibe, they were young, just like me, and then they went into Double XL because that was the new thing. And when I was at Vibe, I quickly realized that they didn't really have like a challenging skin. You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't want to challenge the music. They just wanted to promote the music.
Okay.
And it's a little bit different because it means that there's no critique. It doesn't mean that you have to diss everything, but there's no critique of the music. And I felt I was much more, I'm gonna say crass back then. You know what I'm saying? I'm much younger, so I was, I was burning bridges if I felt people were fake. You know what I'm saying? And so it landed me out of magazines as quickly as I got in. You know what I'm saying? So they didn't really want to hear all of my creative style. And the magazines, especially the major ones, and this is not just hip hop, this is everything. They're like a conveyor belt. Unless you have a big name, which the more I went along, I found out what Bones Malone was able to do was so dope, because articles go through a conveyor belt where they're all made to sound the same, to have the same voice. When that conveyor belt gets really strict, they're also confining the opinions of the people. Think Benzino source, right?
Okay.
That as the example. But so when I would write something creative inside like a technical piece, it would be X'd out. It would be erased, or either as the filler of a piece. We don't need this. This doesn't really say anything about what we need, what we're asking for, or it would be asked to be rewritten, or they would rewrite it. You know what I'm saying? And then I would have pieces out there that, to me, started off boring because it's not me writing, and then it would get into what I was saying somewhat, and then it would end with the boring shit that they was finishing it with. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, only the middle was the shit I wrote. You know what I'm saying? It happened a lot of times. So I just didn't have any success. None of the majors really saw that vision like that. And I understand it now because they were
business.
they were making so much money off the musicians that, like I call it leeches. They had to leech on to the leeches that were, blood sucking the music. So it's like a leech syndrome, so anything that I was saying creatively not only might criticize the artist, even if they were good, but it would put that writer in the forefront. Like it would make us an entity, and they didn't really want that. You know what I'm saying? They didn't want that at all.
Right. Wow. That's kind of interesting because sometimes, like, I'm assuming that went on with the magazines that you mentioned, like the Source, Double XL. So all of these magazines that most of us pretty much kind of held at a high esteem because they were covering hip hop. I guess at the same time, they were also not allowing gentlemen like yourself and others to express themselves in a way that, that we would appreciate, actually.
Yeah, I would say yes and no, because it comes off more complex than that. So like when you see the good writers, like the really good ones that wrote feature pieces and things like that, they were allowed to take in the innovations that already existed. Like I always like to give the example of Gay Talese, the famous journalist, you know what I mean? That wrote a lot of pieces. Like one of his famous pieces was Frank Sinatra Has a Cold. Like the old days when they would hang out with an artist for like weeks and shit, and they would write a piece that would be like what amounted today like 15 pages, like those kind of feature pieces.
Right.
And that was the type of new journalism where they would fictionalize the real life. So they allowed artists to fictionalize the real life. So you could start out a piece saying, RZA was there and he was holding the blunt to his face. And you could get extra descriptive with shit, but you can't really show your artistic skill other than necessary details. So you can add some mundane details, like in the style of fictional journalism, but not much else. You know what I'm saying? Not much else. You couldn't get extra abstract creative.
Right. So you said you respected Bones Malone even more. Would you say that he was able to sort of find a way to still express himself and remain within that type of environment?
I always saw the column as the upper echelon of achievement in the magazine. You get your own column, you can say whatever you want. You know what I'm saying? And so the dream of getting my own column and saying whatever I wanted in whatever style, even if people don't understand it, was just so dope to me. You know what I mean? And now today I'm comfortable in my style that I could go and read his, and he had such a style. You know what I'm saying? The technique, the detail, everything was so dope. And his persona, think about Bones Malone when he wrote, his persona came off so much. So when I was young, I was like, wow, if I could get a column, then I could show my real stuff. And I was seeking to do that with my own college column. You know what I'm saying? College newspaper column. And as I went along, because I couldn't get a column in a major, then I was thinking I could really do this if I just do this creativity in everything. the technical pieces. If they're just gonna give me reviews, which are really the bread and butter of a music magazine, I'll do it in there. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
I have like this one lead sentence that is written so creatively that people be like, "Whoa, who wrote this?" You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
And that was usually the sentence that was clipped. You know what I'm saying? Like I never got a chance to put stuff in there, and a lot of my pieces, like I think one that people that ended up on the internet like 2 or 3 years ago was the people were sharing Big Pun's Capital Punishment review for Double XL, and I wrote that. And readers, most people don't read that well, so they don't notice that it has two completely different styles of writing in it. You know, like a completely different syntax. But unless you're really well read, you're not going to catch it. You know what I'm saying? And of course, I get hell for why don't you give it a double XL and stuff like that. And grades were never up to writers. You know what I'm saying? They were never up to writers. So if you wrote a review, you didn't, unless you were on the staff, you didn't get to say, "Oh, that's a 3, that's a 4." You know what I'm saying? That's a 4.5.
So you mean basically you would write the
Right.
key,
That's not,
but somebody else was putting
yeah,
the
right. Unless you're because a lot of the best
that's kind of messed up in a way though, because
sure, yeah,
the average person walking down the street would be like, "Damn, so why'd you get?"
yeah, yeah. I used to get that out. They'd be like, "Yo, Sunez, how you like?" I'm Puerto Rican. I go back into Sunset, and they're like, "Yo, how you give Big Pun? You know, just the L, the XL. It didn't get the XXL. You know."
Right,
And I'm
right,
like, "And what can I do? I don't give the grades. You know."
right.
And unless you were on the staff, like an editor, and you were writing those pieces, which a lot of them were, like editors knew which ones were going to be the biggest sellers, so they're going to write the Illmatic one, they're going to write the Chronic, they're going to write Cuban Links, and etc. You know, but you might get lucky and write something like a pun that was like they didn't expect. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
But the more militant my writing got, the lesser known artists that I was getting. You know what I'm saying?
That album turns 25, I believe, this month. Do you remember some of the, review that you wrote back then?
You know, they always have the saying that a writer hates his last work. Well, that was my history in the magazines. I hate everything I wrote for a magazine.
Really?
I don't like any of it. I only like one piece, and that was the piece I did for the Beatnuts, because that kind of got me. You know, I like to use the word shadow ban. You know what I'm saying? Because after I wrote that piece, they didn't really give me work because I put real conversation that I had with Juju. You know what I'm saying? And at the time, Juju recognized me as a 5%er because I had my flag on. And he was trying to understand the knowledge of self and really was interested. And I put that whole thing in there. And that was something that they didn't do. You know what I'm saying? So that was, no one complained about it. But I didn't get work after that. You know what I'm saying? I didn't get work after that. You know, but I'll tell you something about the pun review. What I do remember was that the pun, they gave me the shitty cassette, the promo cassette, white tape, you know what I'm saying? And it was, when they put, it was way longer than it should be. It was like 3 hours of ribbon in there. So I'm hearing the first half, and so I'm on the train and I have to fast forward. And, we have the Walkmans and it's fast forwarding. I'm worried that my battery's going to run out trying to get to the other side and hear this shit because I'm already blown away. I'm blown away by what I'm hearing. And then I get to the second side, and it's just as amazing. And I remember Capital Punishment, the major difference with the title track was that the title track had a sample from Boys in the Hood, where it talks about, like, what was his character? The one that was always dropping that, Lawrence Fishburne's character. And he's dropping knowledge on him, saying that we don't bring the guns in.
Yeah.
It had a lengthy sample of that. And then Capital Punishment came in. So they may not have cleared that, and it didn't come out in the final album, but that was the only difference I remember hearing from the final album. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But I know who it was, but when I got it, they were not too hyped about the album. They were like, "It's good."
Wow.
So I got it. It's good. It's got some stuff on it, and I'm like, Capital Punishment's not an album with. It's got some stuff on it. Yeah. There are other albums I really like. You know what I'm saying? I really like a lot. You could say it's got some stuff on it.
Yeah.
The Capital Punishment wasn't one that you say that with. You know what I'm saying? The shit was, it blew me away. You know what I'm saying? And it was probably, I remember that because I had to write a review. You know what I'm saying? But
Hmm.
that's what I remember the most. I do not remember what I wrote fondly. You know what I'm saying? When I saw
Right.
the Instagram, I was like,
Yeah.
because it was so uncreative and unanalytical to me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. But usually only had like 400 words. You know what I'm saying? And today I could say a lot, so much in 400 words. But back then I wasn't good enough to say a lot in 400 words.
Hmm.
You know, I needed like road space. You know, like I needed a whole park to write. You know what I mean?
Right. How'd you get down with the lowlifes?
Oh man, that's recently. That's like 5, 6 years ago. I've always covered different artists that are low lives. You know, like you can't really cover hip hop, you know, in New York if you don't cover brothers that is in low lives. But in the 2010s, I was covering more and more. I even had students, right, that were low lives, and it was really the relationship first that I had with Thurston Howell the Third, right? So Thurston Howell the Third, I'm writing so many pieces about him, and he was so cool with it. But it's three people really. It's Thurston Howell the Third, right? Brother known as the original Rudy Lowe, but also known as Rakim Supreme Shabazz Allah, okay, and Bones Malone also. So when I met Rakim Supreme Shabazz, I met him through the school teaching, and he said he saw what I was doing at the school teaching and dealing with the community, but also in hip hop. And he was like, "Yo, the Low Lives is an organization now. You know, like it's not a gang. We do things in hip hop. We're full fledged an arts, fashion organization, and we need people like you in this community." You know what I'm saying? And I'm one who I never wore polo. I never even wore the polo shirt. You know what I'm saying? Like it had been years since I wore any type of polo shirt. You know, and as I was building with him, he was always telling me, "Yo, I gotta, you should get your L's. I should get your L's." And I was like, "Hey, I'm not gonna ask for anything because I don't, I just build." And so he starts asking about me. Rakim starts asking about me, and obviously Thurston knows me, and they grew up together in Brownsville, right? And they grew up with Bones Malone as well, right? Because they used to all do graffiti together. That's how they started.
Right, right.
When he asks Bones Malone about me, Bones Malone tells him that I'm the only writer that he reads nowadays. So I'm blown away. I'm like, wow, Bones Malone, the guy that I was looking up to, is looking at me like the only writer that's worth his salt. So
Wow.
that has that grit. So I was open, and he says, "Yo, we got to give you your L's, like make me an official low life." So in 2016, I go to Low Goose and a Deuce. I make sure everything is loaded up, my everything, my undergarments, the boots, the socks, everything. You know what I'm saying? I think when I went, the only thing that wasn't low was my big pun cap. I had a big bun cap, but it was about the exclusivity because not many people had that. So I was like, "Yo, it's a dope look. I'm gonna wear that." You know what I'm saying? Because I had low hats, but I was like, we also pride exclusivity. So I was like, yo, let me wear that. You know what I'm saying? And when he had to prove, like we had to go through our clothes, like see what we was wearing and show it. I had like the dopest hype man. It was Sadat X right there, and he was like, "The God got it." It sounded like a chorus. You know what I'm saying? And he's like, "God, the God be on point." You know what I'm saying? And he's doing this while I'm showing all the different clothes, my sweaters, because it's cold. Low Goose and the Deuce. They go to 42nd Street. You know what I mean? And have that annual event, 42nd Street in January.
Yeah.
And I already stuck at winter period. You know what I'm saying? Right? So we're out there and I'm freezing, but I'm unbuttoning, showing all up. I got this shirt underneath, I got this other shirt, this waffle knit, like all this kind of stuff I'm wearing. And it's all good. Like it was just the performance of it because I'm already knighted, you know what I'm saying? And that's how I became a low life. And I remember I say Thurston Hound because before with him, a year before when Sean Price died, right?
Mhm.
Remembered in Perfection, my brother Sean Price. Um, we were at his wake, you know what I'm saying? And there were a couple of people telling people about me as a writer and stuff. And Spit Gems is trying to say that he's not a writer, like he's not like a journalist. He's different.
Hmm.
And the crowd gets split by Thurston Howe. He splits the crowd. He comes through the crowd. He goes, that ain't no journalist though. That's the skill illustrator.
Hmm.
He calls me the skill illustrator, so that's how I got the name Skill Illustrator Low. You know what I mean?
Nice, nice.
Person calls me Skill Illustrator. I think I ought to call myself that. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
didn't give it that name, but that's how I got down with the low lives because they knew that I would represent this with respect. That whatever I was doing was going to show that this was an organization that was doing things that pointed people to a more positive use of this. Make it a real hip hop organization like everybody else is. You know what I'm saying? Like the
Dope.
Rack Lows and what Thurston's doing, what all the artists are doing, the Spit Gems is doing. Everybody's doing something that's amazing. And I was just adding on. You know what I'm saying?
Very dope.
Dope. So just so people that might not even really be too familiar with the low lives, as far as what they're doing now, like you just said, they're doing a lot of things. But for example, if someone that doesn't know is not too familiar, but it's like, oh wow, that sounds pretty dope. How can I keep up with them? How do I know when they're doing an event somewhere? What
Mhm.
do they? Is there an official website or Instagram, or do you just have to keep up with
The
individuals like yourself?
the official websites are like you're looking for people that are in it and also people that represent regions. So most of the official places are with regions or with certain ambassadors. I like to say they're ambassadors because they're founders, but they become ambassadors like Rack Low, Thurston Howe the Third. Um, but there's also other key people that make sites like they have like Low Life Orlando and Thurston House out there, but there's a whole bunch of people that be doing stuff. They have organizations for the children through the Low Lives. There's other Low Lives like different countries like Canada, Italy, Mexico. You know what I'm saying? So if you
Right.
look for these brands, it branches out. Just like if you was looking for like, so I would say like with the founders, you go to the Thurston House, you go to the Rack Lows, and they kind of branch you off into everything.
Okay.
So if I was saying like somebody that's into hip hop, if you go look at Thurston Howe's website, Thurston Howe the Third, his Instagram, or if you go to Rack Low's Instagram, that'll branch you off to nearly everyone.
Okay.
Slowly but surely,
Got
you see what the Low Lives have to offer as far as fashion, organization, hip hop, musical add-ons, and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? And
Okay.
I think it'll get to a point where it'll have like websites to advertise it as a whole. You know, um,
Okay.
but everybody's building up their own branch. And for those that don't know, the Low Lives were a boosting crew, a
Mhm.
fashion boosting crew. But people don't know that they were doing this to keep themselves alive. Of course, like any kind of crime, it became an addiction of the crime itself
Hmm.
and the fashion itself. So no one else could have the fashion. They had to be exclusive with the fashion. They used the fashion as a domineering aspect, but also as an uplifting aspect. So it had all of these contradictory things going on, like anything in the hood that deals with crime and everything. But it was really about taking back dignity at first and surviving. And it mutates to all these other gangs. And the Low Lives are really a union of different boosting crews. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And when they come together, though, they make the Low Lives. You know what I'm saying? And the Ralph Lauren just becomes more of a symbol. You know what I'm saying? Because those are the clothes that are made different year round. So you have seasonal wears all the time. You have
Right.
different things and lots of stuff. You know what I'm saying? But it was really just a boosting crew of fashion where it didn't really matter what the brand was as long as it was dope.
Right. Right. Now you would say that originated from Brooklyn,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
right?
Brownsville. Yeah,
Brownsville, Brooklyn. Okay.
definitely. Brownsville, Harlem Medina, you know what I'm saying? That whole area there, you know what I'm saying? Bed-Stuy,
Real quick, sister, can you explain just again for those that may not know? You just said Medina a couple
right.
of times. You
Us,
mentioned Mecca. I mean, we know, but
us 5%ers, we call the different boroughs different things, you know what
right.
I'm saying? And we call Mecca where the Father Allah, well, he started the nation. We call that Mecca.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? And the first school, the school that I teach at Allah School of Mecca, is the school that he founded. This is the school in the land that the mayor of New York City at the time, Mayor John Lindsay, gave him to teach the youth. And that was in 1967. And so Manhattan is called Mecca. Brooklyn was called Medina. Bronx is called Pelon. Queens is called the Desert. And then Staten Island is Savior's Island. Now, there's names for all the places that where gods live. So they'd be making up names. And sometimes even myself, I say, what? Where are you from? Like, where's that on the map? You know, because sometimes I forget. But that's where all these names come from. So when people hear things like New Jerusalem and things like that, New Jersey, these are things that are coming from us, though. Like, you know, even though other people that aren't in the nation say it. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
right. It's become like just natural, normal for anybody to know. So, and I'm also bringing that up because I'm assuming that there's times where people listen to certain songs and they hear someone like throw a Medina in their rhyme or a Mecca or like Pelon and not have any idea of what exactly they're talking about.
Yeah, that happens more often than not. When people say stuff and I'm like, wow, he said it all wrong here. Or like he said that and it's not even the place. Like,
right.
Yeah, I'll probably say that the places are probably what MCs get right the most out of all the aspects of our teachings, that they get the right.
I would say Mecca, no?
No? They do get it right. People don't flub that too much. They mess up other stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But they don't mess up like where we're from if they mention.
Please. Right.
So,
can you talk a little bit about premierhiphop.com?
Yeah, you know, that's really where I was able to show my elements. So I went through a whole journey of just like artists started to become independent in the early 2000s. I was like, man, we're gonna have to go that route too. And I started magazines that I just couldn't afford to keep on the ground. You know what I'm saying? In circulation. So I started with like the first one I did was called Our Swords, right? Our Sacred Words. And I just couldn't afford it. It was hard to get advertising. It was hard to get it out there in the street, hard to get writers. And I just wanted to write. And when you make these things, you don't get to write. You know what I mean? You don't get to make, you know? And it's like people don't understand, like, to be a journalist and want to write, you had to make your own forum. But at the time, it's the same thing as like the difficulty of an MC. Like, the only way he'll rap is if he makes his own running business. You know what I'm saying? And it's difficult. And I think it's more difficult for a journalist making media, you know, because the MC is just making an album with his words. My only outlet was a magazine, and it's a variety of voices. You know what I'm saying? But I did that first. Then I later I did La Vol Revolt. I named it after one of the goat to me, sonero and salsa.
Hector Lavoe.
And La Vol means the voice, so it was like the voice of revolt, you know. And Revolt happens to be my favorite Eddie Palmieri song, so I put La Vol Revolt, the voice of revolt. And again, I had the same problems. It was hard to keep it in circulation because this is all back before digital, so it's just
right. So you got to take the time to try and do everything, try to put it together.
I got to get all of this stuff, and I'm terrible at all that shit. You know what I mean? Yeah, I just keep it real.
Yeah.
So eventually, I'm kind of take La Vol Revolt as a blog, and I'm just blogging. I kind of quit by the, you know, and I'm just writing occasionally. I'm just listening. I'm seeing what people do right, do wrong, and I start writing in the blog. But people that I respect start seeing it, and I start latching on to people that I think are great that don't get like the notoriety. So the failures in the 2000s, which I call the dark ages, MF Doom, Thurston, we mentioned Thurston, Madlib. You know, these are all people I pitched in the early 2000s, and they laughed at me. You know what I'm saying? And by the late 2000s, I was like, it was Bronze Nazareth for me. You know what I'm saying? I just loved everything he was doing, the way he was a poet, the way he was militant, all this kind of stuff. And I loved, of course, the music. It was rugged. It was sampling the soul. You know what I mean? And when I got that relationship with them, it was because I met digitally Kevlar 7, right? Remember the Perfection,
Mm.
my brother Kevlar 7. That's the brother, the older brother of Bronze Nazareth, and he made beats and he rhymed. A lot of people didn't know that because he didn't like to rhyme on his own beats,
Hmm.
and I used to always tell him he was crazy because the beats he had were he was as dope as Bronze with the beats, but for some reason he just was particular, right? And they decided to make a site, premierhiphop.com, with another brother, Paragon. So Paragon was a graphic designer. He did a lot of albums, a lot of album covers, and so he was going to do the graphic design. Kevlar was going to, A&R find talent to write on because he was great at finding talent. Though a lot of the greatest MCs I met in the 2010s, he was introducing, and he had found it when they wasn't really popping. And he said, "Yo, we need you to write for Premier Hip Hop," and I was like, "Yo, yeah, that'd be great. Let's just write everything, anything that you want." And I said, "You know what? I'm gonna use this space to do everything. To do everything. I'm gonna write creatively." That's when I really started to engage and show like what I wanted to do, like have reviews where like there's a poem that introduces the review, where I would blend in poetry inside paragraphs or put prose, go off into prose when I felt like it. You know what I'm saying? Get a little abstract with things. You know what I'm saying? And still have like a science on music, like give a, extra detail about the music, not just say this, not just use temperature gauging. You know what I'm saying? This
Right.
beat's hot, that beat's cold, because that's really what most writing is. You know, this is hot, this is not, this is, fire, this is right, and that's not music writing. And obviously, as you see here, like my inspiration over the years as I developed this concept of an element of hip hop being this writing, creative writing journalism, wasn't Bones Malone. Its deepest working model was Amiri Baraka,
Mm.
because I'm heavy into jazz too, and Amiri Baraka did everything. He did he did poetry, he did prose, he did plays, he did essays about the music, but you always saw his character in the essays about the music, and I was like, I had to do it like that. And Baraka even made his own album. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
I'm like, this is what I'm trying. I'm embedded in the music. It's my culture, but I'm also covering it though, and I'm covering it creatively, and that's why I come up with the art on art and science on music. And by using that this perfect forum, Premier Hip Hop, I just wrote everything. I never had, I never got. You wrote too long. You shouldn't write this. You shouldn't write that. I have free reign to do whatever I want. I never got any of that shit. All they was like, yo, dope, dope. And Kevlar was so great. He loved everything I was doing. You know what I'm saying? He loved it
The,
all.
when you write, articles, columns, anything that you're covering, right? Do you think about, for example, this where we are in this day and age, and a younger generation? Um, do you write with them in mind as far as like, is this going to go over their head? Are they going to be able, or do you just write and say, at some point they'll probably catch on? Is that something you think about when you're writing?
I think if I wrote for a vision of how I thought of the reader's intellectual level, then I would be as impaired as any artist. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
I do consider what I'm writing to be an art, and I just go with it.
Okay.
I just go with it though. I know that what I try to do when I describe things, I try to describe them in such good detail that I know that I've explained myself to what I was seeking to say.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And when I write like poetry and prose and stuff, I'm very particular that what I exactly meant is in there,
Mm.
because sometimes it's so abstract, it's so coded that if I make an error, it messes up the whole thing because I'm already breaking rules of grammar all the time.
Okay.
You know what I
Right,
mean?
right, right.
Right? So yeah, so I don't really think about the future as far as that. I like to think just the way I teach in the classroom. I don't. I in the classroom you have to gauge the level that the student is on.
Right.
But once that happens, though, I always throw a ladder, and I expect them to climb up to be able to take on this heavy work. So expecting them to question and expecting them to do the research to be able to get to this level of whatever it is, vocabulary, information, and I respect them enough that they'll go on this climb with me. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So I take a gauge. Obviously, with the student, you take a gauge, and you know, like this, he doesn't understand this. He doesn't know this. When I'm writing something, I take into account that if they really learn, they can actually catch all this. So I just make sure that I say everything I meant to say. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
I kind of see it. I see it like this, right? It's more like a Kyrie Irving dribble. Sometimes he does shit, and you're like, "What the fuck did he just do with the ball?" Like, you know, when he makes a move.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I gotta rewind. I gotta recreate what the hell he just did. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't
Yep,
really know how he did it, but you wouldn't tell him to say, "Listen, could you dribble that slower?"
yep. Right.
The upper rows. You know what I'm saying? No, it wouldn't be like that. You know, and if you didn't catch it on the replay, you replay it again. You
Yeah.
know? So I've always written with a concentrated language, though. Like that's something I just can't really get around doing. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Can you
Cool.
talk a little bit about the Power Right Show as well as Classic Storm Radio?
Yeah, Power Right Show. I haven't done the Power Right Show in such a long time because I'm doing so many other things. But the Power Right Show was a way to show what I'm doing as a writer, all of these things I'm doing, and do it in also cover hip hop. So just what you guys do, really quality interviews, get into detail. And I spent so much time covering the era to try to get like who I think are the greats of this era. You know what I'm saying? Who I think is great, who I think is could use the better detail, who's gonna give me that real details about the album, about music making, you know, analyze the lyrics, you know what I'm saying? Stuff like that, you know what I mean? And so it's simple in that respect, but I also try to educate about what my element is, you know what I mean? And show some of my creativity throughout the shows. That's really what the Power Right Show is, you know? And Power Right came about because when I first met Prince Power Rule, right? Marcano, right?
Okay.
We took a picture together and Bones Malone saw the picture and he wrote Power Rule and Power Right because obviously, and you know, when we talk about Puerto Ricans, sometimes we're referred to as Power Rules.
Right.
You know? And the P and the R in the alphabet. And so he flipped that. He wrote Power Right and Power Rules. So I was like, yo, I could call the show Power Right Show. Right? So I thought it fit really well. But that's where that came from. Classic Storm Radio was earlier though. That was Paragon one day. He was with DJ Toshi. And Toshi was having trouble. I don't know who was doing it at the time. And I don't think Toshi had a consistency of host. You know what I'm saying? And Toshi obviously speaks English and stuff very well, much better than he thinks. But he would hate to do an interview. And what happened was Paragon was telling, like, you got to try my brother Sunez. He could do this. He could do this. And, you know, I met with Toshi, and I love Toshi. When you meet Toshi, you love him. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, he does things so selflessly that I was like, yo, I'll build with you. And we started to do the shows. So, like, we're on, like, episode 320 something. And I think I've been there since, like, almost half the years he's been on. So it's like 16 years. I've been with him like 7.
Okay.
I've been with him for 7 years. So that's how that started, you know? So I don't pick the interviews for that. I might suggest some when he doesn't have anybody, but I let him be there. So you guys know, like, you probably get together and say, who do you like and everything like that. I don't do that with Toshi. So he'll throw me stuff, and sometimes it'll be an athletic event for me.
Okay.
You know, almost all the time, the music is, I like it. But sometimes it's interviews with people that I don't know will give me a detailed interview. You know, maybe I'll be criticizing their bars and like, yo, he just basically kills MCs for a living and there's nothing to ask him about. You know what I'm saying? It's just battle bars. Like, but Toshi loves drums. He is obsessed with drums. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So we get drum heavy MCs. You know what I mean? And with a lot of them, it gives me this great exercise of looking deeper and trying to find a deeper interview with these artists. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why we always have that relationship, though. You know what I'm saying?
Right. That's I think we usually get into those type of issues sometimes, right? Where we might come across an artist and we're kind of like, we don't really know about the music, but like what?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
sometimes I also look at it like this: like I might not like the music per se, but it doesn't mean that it might not that person isn't interesting. You know what I mean? There could be a story. There's something about the person.
sure that, yeah,
You know what
absolutely.
I mean? So that's why sometimes, like,
Yeah.
Sincere might say, "I don't know," but I'm just kind of, I don't know. He might be, and we kind of go back and forth with that sometimes, but it always works out, man.
There's a like and dislike that the journalist is always trying to identify and not necessarily eliminate, but let the reader know you like and dislike.
Hmm.
So that way they can know the gauge, So when I write all these reviews, people know the gauge of who I tend to, laud more.
Okay.
Even when I write reviews of stuff that I personally don't really care to listen to all the time, I still can give it a review that shows its quality. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But a lot of people have no idea. Like I don't. The more I write about music, the less I listen to hip hop. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Most of the time, I'm not listening to hip hop. You know what I mean? Not
Okay.
Interesting.
the other soul music, jazz, salsa. You know what I'm saying? Something else. You know what
But you find that to be more like as you got older, also.
I mean? Yes and no,
Oh.
but it's been like since I've been in my early 30s. You know what I'm saying? So this has been a long time. I think it's because when I review an album, I listen to it so thoroughly that I really exhaust it. You know what
Mm.
I'm saying? I really, really exhaust it. And when I write a review, especially when the review is designed to be extra creative, by the time I'm finished with that review, I'm so tired of the album
Got
that
you right, right.
you know what I'm saying? Like it's embedded. I've done everything I could with it. I'm tired. I'm
Yeah,
actually tired when I finish with that. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
interviews and all that kind of stuff all the
yeah.
time.
Right.
You talked a little bit about Power Rule. Can you
I was
talk a
just
little bit about meeting him and how that eventually led to you being a part of the Leftovers?
Yeah, leftovers. Yeah,
Shot.
over, right? But the leftovers, man. When we was building, he didn't know my career. You know what I'm saying? And there was so much that I was obviously that we know about his, and I was amazed. Like this is one of the heroes. You know what I'm saying? And my thing with Marcano is that I don't think this is an exaggeration. I think this is a fact for me that I think I've proven in whatever I've written. He rhymes better now than he did back in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? It's just way better. It's more intricate, it's detailed, right? Storytelling is crazy. And when he saw what I was writing, he saw that I could really say so many different things, and he saw that I could speak. So when he started to come up with the leftovers, he pitched it to me. This idea about the leftovers, the reappropriation of this vicious word, leftovers, and of us leftover gentrifiers, and I relate to it even in hip hop, because even throughout all these things, most journalists they get into hip hop to graduate to other fields. They're not really there to just be in hip hop. They're there just as a launching pad. And after all these years, this is all I wanted to do. You know what I'm saying? And so when he told me that, I was like, "Yo, this is dope." And then I'm with it. I didn't know what we were gonna do with that. I didn't know what we were gonna do. I thought maybe he'd want me to write things, maybe write something manifesto, like I did. I did write a manifesto later, recently, but he started to work on music as the Leftovers Collective, and he was like, "Yo, I need you to start off the whole album." And then that's when I was like, "I want you to detail this gentrification," and that's when I wrote Rogue One. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
So I wrote
Okay.
one. The whole Rogue One verse is me trying to like introduce the entirety of the Leftovers Collective, like not just the song. I'm trying to introduce the whole thing. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And because when he told me, he didn't tell me like just be on this song. Like he was like, "Yo, introduce everything about us. It's gonna lead off the whole album." And
Mm.
that's why I started off. I had said, "Sit to study, plan, stand, I, original man, kneel one knee, neighborhood's furious leftovers, NFL, aim at those that force our flee." So I was like, let me give you the introduction of how tough we are. Like, we that crew, like we're rough, we're big, rough NFL shit. Like, I was like, right? So, and kind of detail like what we're about, you know what I'm saying? And that's where that came from. And it was really Marcano that makes me an artist on this level of a recording artist, not just that, because other people have tried to record me and I've said some things I thought were okay, but it was unusable. You know what I'm saying? I'll admit, like, it wasn't that good. What I said was good, but it wasn't said very well. I didn't have command, you know? And so people, I remember Dave Darr recorded me, the great engineer. You know, other people have asked me for stuff, and it was okay. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't really have that command of what I wanted to say, that my voice, and I'm still learning. But and like I said, I never wrote rhymes. I never wrote anything. So the first thing I ever wrote to even try to record was that Road One verse. You know what I mean?
Oh. As an author, can you run through some of the books that you've released over the years?
Man, it's a lot though.
Some of your highlights.
I could go through all of them. They're pretty quick to go through. But I have 5 books that I've authored and released. You know what I mean? Others that I've edited, but those are the ones that I've written. And the first one was a collection of essays that covered all my work from the 2010s. And I called that The Filtered Reel, Essays from the Invisible Renaissance, because I started to call this era the Invisible Renaissance. You know what I'm saying? So since like 2010, I've said that's the Invisible Renaissance. It's huge. It's mind-blowingly huge, the amount of work and the amount of quality work, but nobody really sees it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so I was actually at the Fuck the Radio release party for Spit Gems, that album. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to Napoleon the Legend, and I'm seeing CF, I'm seeing AG the Coroner, NEMS, FU, everybody, all the Broken Home people, of course, right? GS Advance at the time was in Broken Home. Everybody in Broken Home, A1, right? And I'm seeing all these other MCs, and me and Napoleon are talking about like what we want to do in this hip hop shit, and whatever he said, he did. Like he literally did what he said he was gonna do. You know what I'm saying? And I told him I just want to, at the end of this decade, like people just say I'm the dopest writer. You know what I'm saying? And when I left that party, I was thinking about that. Then I was thinking about Rock Marciano's album. I was thinking about Ka, because I just built with him. And I was like, yo, this is like a renaissance, like, but nobody's gonna see it because I was the only journalist that was there.
Oh wow.
It's like an invisible renaissance. And I started to call it that. You know what I'm saying? So that's where the book came from. So this book, Filtered Reel, Essays from the Invisible Renaissance, was the first one. And that's a picture that's at Classic Storm Radio Studio. You know what I'm saying? That's why you see the Classic Storm Radio logo there. You know what I mean? I was just like, let me just take a picture of my low hat with the Low Life logo and shit like that. And all the records was in the back. Like Toshi's whole home looks like a studio. Like he doesn't have anything that resembles like home. Like he lives inside of vinyl. So, you know what I'm saying? He's hip hop to the core. But as I went along, I started to always make a list of the best records of the year, and I called it the reel of that year. By the time this decade started, it got so huge, I thought I'd put it into a bigger book form. And the ebook sold well, so I combined the reel of 2020 with the next year I was doing, and that became the reel of 2021 and 2020. And this one was like, this is 400 plus pages for those 2 years. You know what I'm saying? And I break everything down into categories though. So like these categories overlap, like burgeoning builders. I make a category of who I know is real 5%ers, hardcore militant rap, boom bap essence, the Invisible Renaissance essential MCs. Those MCs I think are essential to the collecting this era. MCs, MC works, people like Sky Zoo, guys like that. Crime rhymers, shit like that. So people could find what they like, but they'll see how it overlaps, And then the next year, of course, I did it for last year as well, the reel of 2022. And that one is just 2022, but that one came out to 460 pages. So I actually wrote more. You know what I'm saying? And these are covering about, each year I'm covering at least 400 to 700 albums.
Wow. For those who go ahead.
Last year has almost 800 albums covered in it.
Damn.
For those who are looking for those, are those available anywhere? Where can people find those? Directly from me at the best price, but also on Amazon as well. I also have these two. remember I said that I was always writing the poetry and prose. So to highlight it, I said, let me write art on art. Let me extract some of these poetry that I was throwing inside of these pieces and just make it a piece. And my man PQ's done so many album covers. He did the artwork for this. And I called it Art and Art, creations that born this hip hop writer element. And it's basically poems, and it shows the poetry and prose, and it shows what reviews that they were inspired from. You know what I'm saying? And it's just a way of highlighting all of the poetry that I've written in these pieces over the years, you know. And the last book, the fifth book, is really just my essays from my own course that I teach at a law school, the Mecca, the Peace Course. You know, I've been teaching these last 23 years, you know. And those are the books I have now. There's more books obviously coming. There's gonna be a reel of 2023. You know what I'm saying? I'm deep into that one, so that one has like over 100 reviews already. You know what I'm saying?
Nice.
So, at what point did martial arts play a part in your life?
Martial arts has something to do with the knowledge of self. When I was around the gods, the elders always trained in some type of martial arts, and that was a tradition that a lot of the gods of my age group were doing. And they all were the peers I was with were training with a brother named Seagung Bobby Whitaker. He was black. He's a black man from Brooklyn, and he was teaching them. He's like an honorary 5%, and he was teaching all the gods. And they brought me into the circle, and that's how I learned. You know what I'm saying? And all he told me to learn was work hard, and that's an easy payment for me. You know what I'm saying? Right. Taught me. You know what I'm saying? That's how I learned martial arts. You know what I'm saying?
Awesome. Now that's a daily ritual for you, right? I always see you posting on Instagram and practicing
daily, every day, daily. You know.
Now I know most of us know, you know, martial arts, helps a lot in discipline that also applies to other aspects of your life.
Sure.
That
martial arts, especially what I learned, like what we learned too, was a concept of Biang-Zing, which means metamorphosis. So we learned animal styles. We learned the core of what I do is Wing Chun. Think of it like a core of a baseball, Wing Chun. And we learned Qi Kung, the breath work. But all of it was in this Biang-Zing, this metamorphosis, where everyone that was learning was going to do these things individually unique. So none of my brothers would do this as the way I would do it. We would all do it correctly, but differently. You know, just like just like Miles Davis and Dizzy both know how to play the trumpet,
right?
But they play it differently, and it would be kind of like that. And that creativity, when you can learn that physically, to expand that creativity physically, it does extend to other aspects. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times I try to move like I write, and a lot of times I try to, write like I move.
Right.
And those mentalities of aggression, those mentalities of style and grace, I try to incorporate that. You know what I'm saying? And it goes with the music. A lot of times, like people here, I might put music over. I put music over the videos I share. But a lot of times those videos have music. What I'm really training with is just music that's going to get me in that rhythm. So a lot of times it could be, it could be old Chinese classical music. You know what I'm saying? It could be R&B and soul. You know what I'm saying? It could be all types of music, whatever gets me into that flow, that rhythm. You know what I'm saying? That grace.
Speaking of music, you have mantras across the Medinas. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, man. I was doing all these songs, and I've done songs with tons of guys that are legends, like Napoleon, I said, Sky Zoo, Skanks, the Rap Martyr, all these guys that I really respect. Marcano, of course, right? And Substance 810, I'm on shit with him. A whole bunch of people. And Thurston Howe. But one of my students, King Kamal, he always said, like, I want to do a song with you. So I was like, yo, it's cool. Let's do a song. But for some reason, when he sent me that beat, I was like, yo, we should do a song about how we got the knowledge of self. You know what I'm saying? And I called it 9,000 miles, because there's a degree that says about the 9,000 miles. You know what I mean? Like, and I always took that degree to mean the different paths that people take to gain the knowledge of self. You know what I'm saying? So like my path was different. There weren't people in my Brooklyn neighborhood to tell me about it. I had to go seek it. You know what I'm saying? Other people from different countries, we're from different ethnicities. You know what I'm saying? So we get it differently. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And but we arrive at the same place. And so King Kamal, he's from Chicago, and he got it from being in the Nation of Islam and then leaving to get the knowledge of self with the gods. Me, I got a different. I went to a law school in Mecca to get it myself. So it's all we all had these different paths. So we made that song 9,000 miles, and even though the whole thing, my verses, my two verses, don't actually all rhyme. They had a flowing syntax in them. You know, most of it is near rhymes. It's all syllabally matched, and I had never done that before. And I noticed I did that, and it was like I was like, wow, this is the best song I ever made. You know what I mean? Like it rocks like a regular song. You know, not just like a poetic highlight. You know, and he kept going like, yo, God, you could do an album and shit like that. And I was like, and I say, yeah, because I never did that. I never wrote verses of bars like each one's got to rhyme. I always wrote free form, the way I felt the stanza should look as opposed to how it should sound.
Right, right.
Man.
That's dope.
And he was like, I said, okay, let's do it. I was a little ambivalent. I was like, I don't know. And man, he just sent me tracks immediately. Because there's other brothers I'm working on to do a solo album with, and they're getting me beats, but they don't live near, and it took a while. And when it happens, it happens. It will happen though, because I already have songs for that. But with King Kamal, he started to send me stuff and the theme with it, and sometimes also the time pattern, like how many bars are needed to fit into that space, what we need. And the first song he sent me was "It's All Because of a Woman." And that's it's named after Howard Melvin and the Blue Notes song, and it's kind of an inside joke too. But he was rhyming about a relationship, and I was like, wow, so the first song is gonna be the most intimate shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm good at writing about history, like analysis, but damn, I gotta write about my own personal shit.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? I'm gonna do it. Let's do it. And some of them came out poetic. Some of them came out free form. I just did whatever I felt was comfortable in the song. But some of the songs demanded that I rhyme. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just did whatever the song merited. And our focus was about making a good song. You know what I'm saying? And making songs that meant something. Because we talked a lot about being songwriters that make songs that mean something. So there's no real song we have where we're just throwing bars. You know what I'm saying? There's no song like where we just say, I'm just going to talk shit. You know what I'm saying? Probably the closest song that gets to that, like where it's just bars like that, is probably Brothers of the Invisible Renaissance. You know what I'm saying?
So at this point, what kind of feedback have you been getting on the project?
I'll say this though. I'm just like a lot of artists, I'm surprised at who doesn't listen to it. You know what I'm saying? Right?
Yeah.
And I'm surprised I see more of the journalistic field that doesn't cover it though. And most of the journalistic field, they're not covering with detail, like you brothers do. When you really talk to people, they more, especially of the music of this era, they mainly just do bulletins. And that fits because there's so many albums coming out. They just do bulletins. There's no real analysis. You know what I'm saying? And what I also get as a reception is like people were very surprised. And I'm talking about like really dope MCs. They were very surprised that I had this many different styles. But I didn't know any other way to attack these songs. You know what I'm saying? So like one song, like when I did Cycle of Trife, that was a fairy tale style flow I was doing, like I was going high pitched, like I'm telling a story to the kids about, this billionaire rapper, and it's obvious who it is. But others I'm doing different honorary flows. Like when we did Thin Line, for example, King Kamal gave me such a beautiful, intimate verse about his baby mama drama that, except for the details that went way beyond any of the shit I ever experienced, the majority of the shit in the rhyme I lived out too. So I was like, damn, I can't just repeat what he said. You know what I'm saying? I just repeat what he said because I had the same shit. So I was like, let me do the opposite. Let me write about a mother that was instrumental to my life, my mother, you know what I'm saying? And honor her memory. And I did that with, I told you that song Beef was so instrumental to me. So I wrote Peace. it's never belief. When will, confusion
Okay.
see? So that voice sounds so weird because it's not a good KRS One imitation, but it's literally my KRS One imitation. You know what I'm saying? So it comes out as a different flow, but nobody will catch as KRS One unless you know the verse.
Unless you know, right, right, right.
Know what I mean? Because I don't sound like KRS One. This is the way it's. I sound to me. I sound like I'm imitating him because he's one of my favorites. So it's not like you do an imitation of a favorite, but it's way off.
Yeah.
But I would do that on these different songs and stuff like that. And at the time I'm doing it, I'm literally learning the pocket. I'm learning how to put my poetry. I'm learning how not to flood the bar. So like certain verses, I flood the bar. You know what I'm saying? And I see it now. Even though I loved what I said, I fall in love with the words. You know what I'm saying? But with all the songs, we just were really trying to get like these concepts the right way. You know what I'm saying? And it was so much fun to do. You know what I'm saying? It was so much fun to do. And my goal was that with all these hundreds of records that I have, like I already have probably about 180 records already this year, albums.
Wow.
And to make something that lyrically is unique to everything that's out. You know what I'm saying? As far as concepts, as far as storytelling, as far as just the word usage. You know what I'm saying? The style of words, the poetic use of words. You know what I mean? And I think we achieved that. You know what I'm saying?
Where can the viewers pick that project up at?
Yeah, the Mantras Across the Medina, it's out on all the streaming platforms. You know what I'm saying? We have it on Bandcamp. Sunez, King Kamal. Kamal is with a KVMAL. You know what I mean? So it's King KVMAL. You know what I'm saying? Sunez King Kamal .bandcamp. And that album is there to support. You know what I'm saying? That's the best way to support us though, because streaming though, you gotta listen to it like a million times for us to see nickels and shit.
2 pennies, yeah.
Yeah, and unless you want to stream it on repeat like for the rest of your life though, I'm okay
Right.
have it on repeat stream forever. You know what I'm saying? But you know what I mean? Like we tackled everything. You know what I'm saying? Like we talked about everything on that album. You know what I'm saying? Like and I don't think it wasn't something that was we got to do this. It wasn't like we were hitting target markets with the songs. We were thinking about what we needed to say. You know what I'm saying? So like when we did things like the song, certain songs, they just end up being what I wanted to say. So like when he had the verse from Sadat and we did the build, I was thinking like, yo, let me walk these people what it's like if you came into my classroom. You know what I'm saying? So I started the verse like I was introducing you to a seat. Other songs like we had more overt focus. You know what I'm saying? So or I gave it the focus. So like Inscription, that's my solo cut. I was like, yo, I'm gonna show how deep I could get with the wordplay. You know what I'm saying? And how deep I can express this knowledge of self teachings that we have. You know what I'm saying? And so I used those two verses to show that. Other songs like Gets Deep. Some of them with Topical Gets Deep. There's so much talk. Obviously, you've seen it with people saying, where the Puerto Ricans were there in the beginning of hip hop and things like that. And this is something I covered as a scholar. Like this is stuff that I was already seeing that was true. And for people to try to take that away from us, though, and not instead go into the detail of it, was disrespectful, disingenuous, and serving an agenda of separation. So when we did that song, that was something that I didn't even bring up. King Kamal brought up, and he was like, yo, he was yelling at me like the whole day. And he was getting me mad, like on purpose, though. He was like, yo, you got to do this. You got to represent for the Puerto Ricans. Like, you got to say everything. They're trying to keep you out, God. They're trying to take away your shit. And I just flooded on that song. He gave me three segments in there, and I just went off. You know what I'm saying? And that was really the song where I was like, yo, I'm rhyming. You know what I'm saying? Like it's actually rhyming. You know what I'm saying? And I think from that song, when we did that song early on, that's when we knew we had something really strong. You know what I'm saying? Something special. And I also felt comfortable to rhyme after that. You know what I'm saying? It's hard to find a pocket though if I get lost in what King Kamal does too, because King Kamal has such an easy pocket.
Hmm.
He just talks and it's in the pocket.
Right.
Saying like he's on the bell all the time, so he never has a problem though and stuff like that. Me, there's things I want to say, and so a lot of times I write the rhyme to end up. I have to edit the rhyme to fit the pocket. So I have to
God.
do a lot of editing because there were things I want to say, and then I have frustrations because there's words I find beautiful that sometimes don't fit. What I'm saying? I have to say, ah, shit. But if they don't hear that word, maybe they may not get what it means and stuff. But then I have to, in this case, in this type of form, I have to say, you know what, they'll get it. I have to let them get it. You know what I'm saying? I can't give it all. You know what I'm saying? That's what happens. And a lot of these songs have those that that those struggles there. But a lot of this stuff is real life, like Rally Round the Family. That police brutality rally where I'm in the back of the bunch and I'm with anonymously with Fat Joe talking shit through the whole rally. That really happened. You know what I'm saying?
Oh wow.
That really happened. You know what I'm saying? And that's what made me rethink about just doing that. I felt like we needed to do more than just rally, like
Hmm.
more things like that. And so these songs really came out from just like personal experience and shit like that.
Man, really dope.
Press.
Mantras Across the Medinas is out on all platforms, Bandcamp as well. Can you catch us up on what we can look forward to in the future and what you got going on right now?
Oh man, I'm actually working on a solo album, all executive produced and manned by King Kamal. I'm working on another album that is it's a very militant. It's a martial warrior album about all my though that perspective only from myself, and I'm doing that with the great Willie Ways. You know what I'm saying? Willie Ways, a dope MC out of Virginia. He lives in Australia now.
Hmm.
So that has some stuff that is like really like progressive in there too, because I'm really making stuff that I don't see around and expressing things that I have that haven't been expressed in that form. So those are two musical things I'm working on. Aside from other things, I've been in a lot of other projects. Like I narrate Thurston Howe's new album, Thoughts Illustrated. There's other albums that I'm featured on that are coming out, you know what I'm saying? Some really good ones where I'm actually rapping, and not just doing the poetry, which is cool. Um, there's other books I'm working on, like I'm working on the book of the Dark Ages. Those 2000s are my experience as a journalist and my commentaries. Um, I have books about other genres of music I'm working on, you know what I mean? And I also have a book on my martial philosophies, so that's more of an artistic book about the philosophies. So it's not like this punch is thrown this way and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? It's more of an artistic kind of merging martial philosophies with my poetry. You know what I'm saying? So that's another book that is on its last stages and shit.
So, man, with so many different things that you're doing and have done and are involved with, I know most people tend to say, "Oh, when it's all said and done," I don't like saying that, but I want to ask you: when you decide that it's all said and done, what do you want, or what would you like the people to say about Sunez?
Um, since we're talking about hip hop, obviously with hip hop, I would like to, as a kid, you always say, well, like to be said.
No, 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 not just hip hop, man. Overall, you,
But as me, Sunez, when
yes.
people look at what I've done, say that it was honorable, that it taught people things, but not just things that they needed to learn, but also about creativity itself. And I hope I expanded that palette and gave people the um, the inspiration to be completely free. And I don't mean free to just be a savage, but to be free in this righteousness. You know what I'm saying? That you don't have to be free in the culture and just be savage with it. Like it's not making a great record if I just kill as many people and have as much sex as possible with hoes as like we always think about freedom in art as just doing the most vile shit and going that way. But what would be freedom though if we just did it righteous, like just uninhibited righteousness, you know what I'm saying? So these are things that I would like people to think about, you know, and just to be inspired with all of the work that I do. You know what I'm saying? And that when people saw my work, they saw something of beauty, but also something of merit. You know, something that taught them. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
Whatever it is, the martial arts, everything.
Right, right. Man, Sunez, so do us a favor, Megan. You please let everybody know where they can find you, where can they follow you, your social media, anything that they want to keep up with Sunez. Please let them know.
Indeed. I'm on Instagram, Sunez, just Sunez. I'm on Twitter, Sunez7. That's the number 7. So it's right, Sunez7. I'm also on Facebook, Edward Sunez Rodriguez. A lot of people think Sunez is my honorable name, like the given name. It's actually not. But on the Facebook, it's my honorable name, Edward Sunez Rodriguez. Sunez is written in there because when we used to write for magazines like The Source and Vibe, they wouldn't allow you to use your pen name, or in this case, my righteous name, the name that you got paid with. You know what I mean? Like the name
Right.
that you got your checks written to. They had to put that. So in quotes, they would put that pen name or righteous name in the middle. You know, so I put that as my Facebook name. But on those areas, you can contact me. Sunez9797 at gmail.com is the email if you want to email me there about anything. Um, all the books and things I sell, they're always at a discount when you get them directly from me. But everything is on Amazon. All the books are on Amazon. All the music is on all the streaming platforms. We're on everything. It's on everything. You know, so
Nice.
I mean, I even teach martial arts, especially when the weather gets good out here in New York. So if people want to come to the Staten Island area out in New York, they can also email me and DM me or whatever about that. You know what I'm saying?
Nice, man. Well, once again, on behalf of myself and the journalist Sincere and
Indeed.
Changing of the Hip Hop Guards, we appreciate everything you have done in the past, in the present, and everything that will be coming your way in the future as well. And I just want to say too that it's very much appreciated. I know sometimes, you know, when it comes to journalism, writing, and things of that nature, sometimes it gets a little overlooked. You know what I mean? Like somebody might just pick up something, read it, but they're not really paying attention that like it's actually a person who took the time to do the research, the homework, and all that time that goes into writing a piece. You know what I mean? So I just want to say you're very well appreciated, man. So thank you.
Thank
And it's an honor and it's a pleasure that you joined us tonight, man. I
Absolutely.
feel it kind of get the same way I'm kind of saying that to you. It kind of gives me a little bit like, damn, man. Thank you for the acknowledgement. You know, so thank you.
Absolutely, man. It's an honor to call you brothers my peers. You know what I'm saying? Like y'all are dope. You know what I
Thank
mean?
you, man. Thank you.
Appreciate. Thank you so much for the inspiration and all that you do, and we will see you in the near future.